'cause you're out of my head, and it's really just another sad song now. Ooh, come on! I'm fine, just don't try to hide on it. A careless disguise, well, I fell hard and I fell fast, but you know that leave your mark and we'll forget about it. Ooh, let me forget about it.
Hold up, another wave coming. Hit the ground, we're running. You and I fall all the way. Listen, hear my demons falling. So tired, I'm crawling, but I know you're here to stay. Smile for the camera, 'cause the world's on fire. Cheers to the moment when the walls run wild. I'll be holding on with you. Dance with the devil in the pouring rain. Sharks in the water, but it's all the same. I'll be holding on. I'll be holding on with you. Pull up, yeah, the flash is stunning. Two pistols gunning, you and I, we shoot the same. Some things come our way, some things go, but I know you and I will never change. Whoa, smile for the camera, 'cause the world's on fire. Cheers to the moment when the walls run wild. I'll be holding on with you. Dance with the devil in the pouring rain. Sharks in the water, but it's all the same. I'll be holding on. I'll be holding on with you.
Why does beer have to taste so good, but too much makes you feel so bad? Why are some days empty hooks, and some days it's every other cast? Was there a shooter on the grassy knoll? Where did D.B. Cooper go? Hell, where do socks in the dryer go? I guess some things you ain't meant to know, like how you look even better in the morning, wrapped up laying in my bed. How I did it, just don't get it. I look at you and just shake my head, 'cause out of 7 billion people on the planet, never understand it, how you ended up with me, girl. It's just one of those mysteries of the world.
Right.
Awesome. So this is your levels.
Great.
So you feel everything, and
Is this good?
you can feel free if you have remarks or anything to just stash them right there.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So the cue for the video for Phil and for Big Mike and for Will is going to be. Oh, there he is.
Brad.
The cue. Liz is going to say roll the tape. So that should be our cue to lower lights and play the video. So I'll let Liz pray.
So now we have an amazing video we wanna show you. Do I front loaded with like what's it about, or just it's like a mysterious?
Why don't you watch the video and then you can see how?
Okay.
I think it might be
Awesome.
easier.
Okay,
Jordan
great.
the jam, pump Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome senior correspondent at Fox, Liz Plank.
How's everyone doing? Can you hear me well? Yes, alive. I am not Billy Eichner. I'm sorry. I hope I have really big shoes to fill, but I hope you accept them. So I'm really excited to be here tonight with you because you're all here making a huge difference in your community and in this world and in this country. We're only 4 days to a very important election. Is everyone who can vote registered to vote? Raise a hand. Yes! I love that. I love that. So since we are in a room packed with amazing change makers, I know that a lot of, does everyone use social media? Does everyone have social media accounts? Instagram? Instagram? Yes? I thought it'd be kind of cool if we all did a massive Instagram story, all of us together, all at the same time. Do you want to try it out? And I thought maybe we could call it the voting challenge. Okay, so you know how there's the Kiki challenge? Kiki, do you love me, right? So this is what we're gonna do. And I thought about this on the plane. If you don't like the idea, if anyone has a better idea, let me know, just like shout it out. But I thought we could all do, Kiki, do you love me? Go vote. You wanna do it? Okay, everyone pull out your Instagram and show it to me. I want proof, okay? Yes. Brad? A video. You can put a filter if you want. We don't, okay, even if you don't have service, you just have to save it. You know how it works. David Hogg, pull it out. Everyone, come on, you don't have Instagram? Okay, we're gonna do it because we only have like 3 more minutes and we're gonna, get going with the actual program. Okay, so are you ready? We're gonna say, Kiki, do you love me? And then go vote. I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, go, and we're gonna do it. Why are you staring at me? Pull out your phone. Come on. It's very simple, and it's an easy way to make a difference. Okay, we're gonna do it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, press. Kiki, do you love me? Go vote. That was great! That was so good! You guys are all amazing. I love you. If you don't have service, just press save. It's at the bottom left corner. It's very easy. Ask a millennial. There are plenty of them out in the room. Okay, so I want to get started with an incredible video that talks about a very important quality that I have encountered so much tonight, meeting all of the amazing people that you're going to be meeting tonight. Parkland students, the Vote Saves Lives, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, and Captain Kelly all have this incredible quality called courage. And all of you have it too. It's all inside. And so we're gonna watch a short video and then we're gonna get started with the program and you meet all these incredible people. So roll the tape. Roll the tape.
Courage is the most important. Courage is the most important of all the virtues. Finding courage in the leaders and in you who will become leaders. Because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently.
What is courage? What is courage? How do we define it? How does it show up? What does it look like? Courage is running toward instead of running away. Courage shows truth to power and stands its ground. It's walking out. It's sitting down. It's marching toward something greater. Courage is telling your story even when it's hard to speak. It's there when we defend our families and communities, when we dare to love, when we stay in the race. Courage is contagious. Courage helps us find the grace to forgive. Courage looks like this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Arielle Giffords from Southern Arizona. You know, you can either complain about something or you can try to fix it.
I will always extend my hand across the aisle to do what's right for the American people, to build consensus, and to get the job done.
Yet defiance of the mob in the service of what is right is one of the highest expectations of courage that I know.
Earlier today, a number of people were shot in Tucson, Arizona. We know that Representative Giffords was one of the victims. She is currently at a hospital in the area, and she is battling for her life.
Arizona Congresswoman Arielle Giffords, wounded in an assassination attempt just about 2 weeks ago, is about to take the next big step along what's expected to be a long road to recovery.
It takes courage to keep going, especially when it feels impossible.
To witness the return of our colleague, who is the personification of courage, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
It's standing up and finding your voice again. It's learning something new. Courage is listening, and courage is speaking out. Courage is saying, we can do better, and knowing no problem is too big to fix.
I figure if the world wants you, I'll give a better world.
This is what courage looks like.
Please give a warm welcome to Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and Captain Kelly.
These are scary times. Racism, sexism, lies, violence. It's time to stand up for what's right. It's time for courage. We must do something. We must stop gun violence. Protect our children, our future. Let them lead the way. Make our country a safer place, a better place. Do you have the courage to fight? Stand with me. Vote, vote, vote. On election day, your voice matters. Please join your voice with mine. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you so much. Let's give another warm round of applause. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Captain Kelly, how are you?
I am good. It is always great to be back in Houston. I lived.
Yes.
I lived here nearby for over 15 years, so it's great to be back, especially to be here on the campus of the Cougars.
Yeah.
7-1. Is that right? The football team 7-1. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Amazing. You have been all over the place. You've been traveling around the country. You probably have a pulse better than so many. I mean, a lot of people maybe have a pulse, but you have like a real pulse on what's happening What's going to happen on Tuesday?
Well, I mean, elections can be unpredictable, as we know, right? I think people realize that, like, unexpected things can happen. I think a lot of us have experienced that here recently. But Gabby and I have been traveling around the country. We've recently been in New Jersey and Minnesota and the state of Washington and Southern California and Florida. And we've been traveling around the country like crazy people, trying to help a bunch of candidates get elected that will do something on this issue of gun violence, an issue that makes our country stand out in absolutely the worst of ways. And the sad thing about it is we know it will work, right? We know that legislation works. Laws matter. But what's going to happen on Tuesday? You know, they've been talking about wave elections, like
a blue one,
a blue wave. Gabby was a Democrat. She was a Republican before she actually ran for office in the state house, state senate, but in Congress and in elected office, she was a Democrat the whole time. And most of the candidates that we support are Democrats. And this is supposed to be a wave election. And I think historically what we tend to see is when we talk about a wave election, the wave is usually bigger than people anticipated in hindsight. So that's what I hope happens.
I love that prediction.
We just need to continue to work hard. Folks that are here today, all of you probably already voted, and if not, you're planning on voting. If you haven't, you got to vote. You got to show up. You got to get your friends and neighbors to vote. It's so important. Often these races can come down to one single vote. We saw that in 2017 in Virginia.
And why is the issue of gun violence so important to you?
Well, it's not just from Gabby getting injured. Gabby was shot in January of 2011. She was in the hospital for 6 months. I flew my final space shuttle flight on Space Shuttle Endeavour in May of 2011. But about a year and a half later, almost 2 years later, is when the shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School happened. 20 kindergartners and first graders killed in their classrooms, and a pretty weak response, I thought, from a country that should really stand up and take serious action when something like this happens. And then we see this time and time again. So Gabby and I decided, I think, like, all of us, if you see there's a problem, and I think Gabby said in the video, if you gotta step forward and try to do something. And you got to try to help people, and you got to try to make a difference. So we are just doing our small part in this. The kids from Florida and around the nation, the ones that the Parkland kids have organized, they're doing their part. They're incredible. It's a pretty exciting time in our democracy for a lot of reasons with the turnout of young people that we're seeing in this election across the country. It's pretty exciting. But we've had, since the shooting at the Columbine High School, we've had 150,000 kids shot with a gun. A lot of them have died. And we just don't pass strong federal law to try to deal with this problem. We've had a lot of success at the state level. But we've got to convince members of Congress that this is the right thing to do. The politics on this issue is changing. People would often really care about the rating that they would get from the National Rifle Association. Now it's hard to find those ratings on their website. They're trying to hide them because it's not like an attractive thing to have for your campaign anymore. But with 36,000 people shot and killed every year in our nation, another 100,000 shot and injured, for us to not take action on this is just irresponsible, and it's stupid. And it's costing our country billions and billions of dollars every year beyond just the loss of life. And you got to think, this is the thing that I often think about. Maybe one of those kids at the Sandy Hook Elementary School or the Santa Fe High School or the school in Parkland, maybe this was the person that was going to cure cancer someday or, create the next company like Google or Apple. And that's just not going to happen when we have this kind of loss.
And you used the term mission, that you went on a mission around this issue, and you and Congresswoman Giffords have been such pioneers and leaders when it comes to the issue of gun violence. There's that issue, and there are many other issues, right, that are at stake in this election. What would be your advice to people who are out here, you know, trying to find what their mission is, and how do you stay so connected to that mission? I know that, I mean, you've done a lot of missions. You've done missions in outer space. How do you manage to be so focused in those efforts?
Well, I think it's important to find something you really care about. It's much easier to work on something that you care about than something that's not that important to you. So find something that, you know, really motivates you, and realize that all of us can have a much bigger impact than we think on so many different things. I mean, I don't want to quote Woody Allen, so I'm not going to. But there was somebody who said, you know, 80% of anything is like just showing up. And just going a little bit extra than that, we all can have a tremendous impact on issues. So we're just trying to do our part on this issue.
Yeah. Speaking of space, I'm just really curious. So if aliens...
She went to space camp, by the way.
I was, in Canada. Real nerdy. And I ate the space food. We talked about the space food. I don't know if everyone is as interested about the space food as I am, so maybe we can save that for later. Unless, no one cares. Well, okay, let's talk about aliens first, okay? And not like Ted Cruz, like real aliens, okay?
Isn't he Canadian?
Yes. I'm attacking my own. Yeah, we don't claim him as Canadian. We don't. No one really knows in Canada. So, okay, aliens. If aliens come to Earth, like, does Donald Trump have a plan? Like, are we gonna... What do you...
I think that's why he wants to create the Space Force, is to deal with the alien invasion, because the current... You know, the Air Force Space Command, they have their job. They take care of, like, early warning of ICBMs, and they contract launches of satellites, and then they pay attention to our satellites in space. Okay. So that job's already been, we're already doing that job. So maybe that's the point of the Space Force. I don't know.
Right.
But, you know, aliens, you know, when I was in the Navy, I visited Area 51. There are no aliens in Area 51 because they moved them. They moved them to Area 52.
Oh. What do you think aliens look like?
Probably not like us.
No.
Probably not 2 legs,
Okay.
2 arms. You know, this is a big universe, 2 trillion galaxies, all with hundreds of billions of stars. More stars in our universe than grains of sand on every beach and in every desert on Earth. Actually, more than that. It's a lot. There's probably life out there. We're not going to visit it. I mean, Alpha Centauri, 3.84 light years away. For us to get there at the speed we can travel at, you're looking at like 40,000 years to get there. So we don't, you know, we need to worry about this planet. Don't think, and this is why voting's so important. There is no planet B. I mean, we're not moving to Mars someday. I mean, we've got an environmental problem. We've got a gun violence problem that's significant in our country. Makes us stand out in the worst of ways. And the answer is not more firearms, and this comes from a gun owner. But we also have an environmental problem that our nation is currently ignoring. Leadership is ignoring it, and if we don't do something about it, you young people out here, I mean, you know, your children and grandchildren are in big trouble if we don't take care of our environmental issues. To do that, you've got to elect the right people to office. You got to make a change in the leadership in the House of Representatives and in the Senate and in 2 years in the White House. And if we do this, we have a chance. We are the first generation to realize we have a significant issue. We're also the last generation that can do something about it.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Captain Kelly. We are going to now welcome our student activist leaders to the stage. I think they're just going to storm on. Like.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, let's do it. Come on.
We're going to get some more chairs.
Give a round of applause to Captain Kelly. And yeah, come on, guys. Just there's chairs. Yes. All right. Can everyone start by introducing themselves and telling us where you're from and what drives you to go and vote, if you can, on Tuesday?
Yeah, so I'll start. I'm Marcel Mcclinton. I'm 17, a high school senior, thank goodness. And yeah, so I can't vote, on Tuesday, or I couldn't have voted. But I feel like it was important to do my part this election, just like Mark Kelly just said. We're the last ones that can do something to change the course of the country right now, and it's scary to wake up every morning and look at your phone and look at the news, that came up last night. And I'm tired of looking at my phone and being scared. So I'm just doing my part.
Hi, I'm Megan McGuire. I'm from Santa Fe High School. I'm 17, so I unfortunately cannot vote, so I urge you all to for me. I'm here because I realize that if we don't do something about it now, it's not going to happen. We have to change this epidemic and nip it in the bud immediately.
Hi, my name is Arielle Hobbs. I'm actually a junior at the University of Houston, so go Cougs. And what motivates me to do the work that I do is being tired of waking up every day to either another alert from UHPD, about another student being robbed at gunpoint, or tired of seeing shootings like Santa Fe, Parkland, even the Sutherland Church shooting, the shootings that happened in Louisville this past weekend, the shootings that happened in Pittsburgh. Tired of going on Twitter and going on Instagram or getting these alerts on my phone, seeing that more families have been torn apart, and seeing that, especially my community, the African American community, that this is wiping us out. This is taking away so many kids so young, seeing 5-month-olds, being killed by friendly fire and stuff like that. That's why I do what I do, because it has to stop. So.
My name is Ryan Dyke. I am a recent graduate of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. I do a lot of this work because of a bunch of reasons, but I'll keep it short. February 14th is my sister's birthday. She lost over 3 friends that day, and she will never have a normal birthday again. Our community will never be the same, and we have to fight to make sure that no other community has to go through that tragedy. And as we've seen, it's already happened again and again and again. I apologize if I ever look at my phone while I'm on this stage, as there was a shooting in the state capital of Florida in Tallahassee just before this event began. The shooter is dead. He has killed himself, but there are 4 people that are currently injured, and the reports are still coming out. This happened at a yoga studio. It's sad that these things continue to happen, and we have to continue to fight against it.
My name's David Hogg. I'm from Parkland, Florida, and I'm an 18-year-old that's ready to make this country represent what it says it does on paper. And I'm here to create a country where no 17-year-old walking hormone has to learn what empathy is because his sister lost 4 friends in one day. I'm here to create a country where gun violence is not seen as a partisan issue, but a human issue that we have to solve by working together, by attacking the sources of evil and not the people that are perpetrating it. To create an America where we don't crawl on each other and claw to the top of the system, where we race each other, by working together with each other to solve all the issues we face. As Americans and as human beings, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as a country that stands up to violence and injustice and says no more with our vote. Not just this election, but in every election, with the understanding that November 6th is not the finish line. November 6th is the start line of a revolution for justice and equality in this country.
Arielle, you organized a March for Our Lives march that, was huge. 15,000 people showed up. Yeah, incredible. What drove you to do that, and what advice do you have for anyone who's organizing? How were you able to get so many people to show up?
Well, first I want to shout out to a couple of people that are actually in the audience that helped me along with creating the march in Houston being so big. Maddie Lake and Miguel, they're both here. They're sitting right here in the front. They've been with me the entire time. Cameron's here, Cameron Waller. She was also a vital point in making the march in Houston as what it was. What did we do? It's more so, like, when people ask me that, it's more so like, what didn't we do? Speaking for myself, I know what motivated me was waking up and seeing, the play-by-play of what was happening in Parkland. Because I had already kind of walked into the activist scene. I went to the Women's March in 2016, I was already kind of getting into that headspace. And then when Parkland happened, it was like a light went off in my head, and I was like, there's a problem here. Like, something is seriously wrong. Like, I was alive when Columbine happened, but I'm too young to really remember it. I kind of remember Sandy Hook. But just, seeing that these things can happen. My dad's an elementary school teacher. So when shootings happen in schools, they automatically, like, I can't help but think about him and think about his students and just think about, like I said earlier, like the families being torn apart. Like, Ryan's sister will never have a normal birthday again. No kid deserves to go through that. No kid deserves to be like, oh yeah, I know that girl. Yeah, she died this so-and-so, and so she was shot here, she was shot then, Oh yeah, well, like in Pittsburgh, oh yeah, they shot them because, they didn't like Jews. No one deserves to go through that. No family deserves to be put through that trauma. We say that we're a country of a land of the free. We say that we get on these other countries for not being safe and not taking care of their citizens, but what can we say? Kids are getting killed in schools. They're getting shot up in churches and synagogues and Walmarts, walking down the street, just minding their business, being everyday citizens. How can we criticize those other countries when we can barely keep our own people safe? So, like David said, holding America accountable. You say you want to be this safe country, and that you care about your people, and that, everybody has the right to live. Well, I obviously don't have the right to live because I can be gunned down at any point. My right to live obviously is not that important enough because you want your guns that bad. My right to live and everybody else's right to live in this room is not that important then. And it's about holding America accountable. What I would do to give people advice is stand up for what you believe in. Don't be scared. I live in Texas talking about gun violence prevention. Like, I don't get the warm welcomes everywhere I go. People aren't excited when I'm wearing my flag t-shirts or when I say that I work with March for Our Lives. I don't get that, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for what you're doing. It comes from some people, but most people kind of look at me like,
Is it really most people? Is that the reaction? Is there really a backlash to wanting?
So the reaction, I want to address one thing that you're talking about holding America accountable. When we're talking about holding America accountable, we have to remember that Solving gun violence in one zip code is not solving gun violence. Solving gun violence in every zip code and for everybody, no matter their income or where they come from, is solving gun violence. And when it comes to the backlash, the way that I explain to people that say oh, why do you go after the NRA so much? It's well, for one, they blocked legislation when they were passing the the Consumer Protection Act, so that toy guns are literally regulated more for safety than actual guns. Guns are not under the Consumer Protection Act because of the active lobbying of the NRA. We have $0 allocated to gun violence prevention research in this country at the CDC, the NIH, the NIJ, or the National Science Foundation for an issue that kills more people than polio every year in America. Well, that stuff and different diseases that kill even less people get millions of dollars for funding. The difference is those diseases don't have corporate lobbyists that are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by benefiting off the death of Americans. One of the people that's running for governor in Florida, Andrew Gillum, said this. One of his lines that he says a lot that I've taken a liking to is the fact that our children are off limits to the NRA. And they have to be with our vote. Because if we vote, we win. If we go out there and we show politicians that, listen, you may have this one angry person that's saying, I don't believe in universal background checks or funding gun violence research or protecting police officers because I need a military-style assault rifle. If we are able to counter that person with 2 or 3 more people, we win. If we were able to go out there and vote as a single-issue gun owner, or gun violence prevention activist, we win because we need to stand up as a country to corrupt politicians that take millions of dollars from the gun lobby, that make money off the violence and the death of innocent Americans every day with our vote. And we have to continue to hold them accountable so that even though mass shootings get more coverage than everyday shootings, we need to recognize that everyday shootings, no matter how big they are everyday problems that we have to solve. But when it comes to the backlash, the best trust me, we're in Texas, let me tell you. I actually wrote my college essay on Dallas, Texas, and talking to people that want to kill you. And what I find a lot of the time, is, what I wrote about is the fact that a lot of hate that we face, no matter where we come from, I realized that a lot of the hate that we face the root of that is fear. And the root of that fear is a lack of knowledge. And if we're able to go out and educate people on what we actually advocate for, we're able to stop that fear. And through stopping that fear, we're able to stop that hate. So for example, when people call me a gun-grabbing communist crisis actor, one, me just being there kind of disproves that, but 2, what I explain is what we advocate for is the same way that people advocated for safer cars and roads. The people that advocated for safer cars and roads weren't anti-car or pro-car, they were pro-people not dying. We are pro-people not dying. And by using the 2 things that Donald Trump and others like him fear most, which is love and education, we can and we will end this issue. If you vote.
He loves the poorly educated. Megan and Marcel, you have both done incredible acts. So Marcel, you organized a die-in in the offices of Mitch McConnell, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. And Megan, you organized a press conference along with other people. I know she doesn't like to take credit. That
was all them.
In Santa Fe.
I just showed up.
But I would love to know what you learned in terms of targeting officials, right? A lot of the work that needs to be done is being able to talk to politicians and make them do stuff and make them be responsible towards their constituents. What have you learned in those amazing acts of civil disobedience, kind of, and then at that press conference? What did you learn through those experiences?
Yeah, so after a die-in that was organized not by me, we being Matt Dyke, Bree Butler, myself, led like 50-something people into the Capitol and just marched, chanted, and demanded change in front of these, well, none of them were there, but their chief of staffs, were annoyed, and their secretaries were also annoyed. But, in these meetings, with Mitch McConnell especially, I was so sick and tired. I finally just had like a wake-up call, and I was like, why am I going to sit here and respect this office, right, when you are going to go on TV and go into your living room in your bedroom and just say, like, I hate these kids, they're stupid, they don't know what I'm talking about. And they kind of did that to our faces, and it was rude and disrespectful. And so I think that if every kid just woke up and said, like, these politicians don't care about us, and so I'm not going to care about you having a job after November. I'm not going to care about you having a job after that, right? Why is that my responsibility? Yeah, and I think that everyone in this room is just sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? And I say that a lot, and some people don't get it, but shout out to you guys. No, but really, like, you have to go into these offices, into these meetings, and on these calls, and just say, like, no BS, like, what you're doing is not okay, and just say what you want, and demand change. Don't ask for change anymore. Demand change. We've been asking for way too long, and I'm tired of asking.
To keep it brief, I would like to, some elected officials have refused to listen to what we're trying to say, and at this point, you just have to accept that they're not going to. They're not going to listen. They're not going to change because, like he said, they don't care. They don't care about the people that died at my school. They don't care about the people in Pittsburgh. They won't listen. So what we have to do is to just vote them out. They don't deserve to be there. They don't deserve to run our country, and we deserve more. So vote them out.
Can I just add real quickly that Senator Cruz has hung up on the March for Lives Houston crew when we organized the march. They did not respond to phone calls, emails, or anything. And Rhonda Hart, my best friend, we tried to set up a meeting with Ted Cruz, through election season, and what they offered, we can meet with them November 9th. So let's just make damn sure that meeting does not happen. It won't happen. We're not going November 9th. That'll be Beto's office. Thank you.
Ryan, you have been very critical of the media. And as a member of the media, I really appreciate it. I think that you've been able, no, I do. You called out the media for sensationalizing a lot of these shootings and the shooters in particular. What would you like to see the media do differently in the way that they cover the issue of gun safety?
That's a great question. I think the answer to that is really a project that David's been spearheading for a while now. It's called No Notoriety, in which it basically entails that whenever these shootings or bombings or any incidents of violence occur, these people who perpetrate the violence are plastered on the media. Almost every single national coverage, local coverage, their face is what you see. And most of the time, the best you'll get is their face next to the face of the people that they hurt and the families that they destroyed. Now, if you give that to a person, you are giving fame to this violence and this hatred, and you're giving these people, for the most part, what they want. In the issue of Parkland, the shooter made videos that actually entail that he wanted to be known for this. And that's why we make a point to not say his name and not show his face, because this is what he wanted. And why would we give terrorists what they want?
And on that topic, the way that we cover mass shootings is horrible. It's stupid and horrible because we cover them like we cover car crashes or natural disasters. Gun violence is not an act of God. It's an act of a person with a gun that never should have had that gun in the first place. And that's why we advocate to prevent those people from being able to get guns. And the way that I like to talk about it is, if you look at if you see a car crash on the news, like, you'll see the crushed up car, but like you never see like the victim's face because like our society has accepted that as something that just happens, which is wrong. But it's the same thing with this issue. We see the shooter's face and we see the gun, but we rarely see the victim's face as nearly as much, and that's not okay, because the way that we have to cover gun violence and mass shootings is the same way that airplane crashes are covered, where they focus on the issue, how they got the gun in the first place, and how we're going to make sure this never happens again.
We're now going to move on to the portion of the program where we answer your questions. So what can we do about urban gun violence? And this is coming from a student in the room. Who would like to take it?
I can take it.
We can both do it.
Okay. I want to preface in starting saying that the area that I was raised in was not like the area that I currently live in. I was raised in Cypress, Texas. It's northwest Houston, a suburb, typical suburbia, everything that you would kind of imagine when you think of the suburbs. Very safe, you know, went to school, knew all the people, very relaxed environment. If you couldn't tell when you drove by, the University of Houston is in the 3rd Ward. It is a very low-income area. They are below the poverty line. A lot of these people that live here are uneducated to a certain extent. And I would like to say I never truly understood gun violence until I moved here. I love living on campus. UHPD does a very good job in making me feel safe, but it does not also keep me from looking out the window in my dorm and knowing that this past spring, 2 8-year-olds were shot about 10 minutes away from where I live. Or that in mid-June, about 10, 20 minutes away from where I live, a girl that I know, her name's Terry, her best friend, her car was shot up 40 times. You know, so urban gun violence is a tricky subject because it's a manifestation of everything else wrong in their communities. They're underfunded, undereducated, and no one cares about them. Have y'all read Lord of the Flies? I love that book, Lord of the Flies. We all saw what happened when they stayed on that island for too long, right? When it was just them. They started to turn on each other. They went crazy, so they started to kill each other. You know, they did things that if you were to ask them before, they probably would have thought, I could never do that. When you stick people and keep people in an environment that is so negative, that is so unproductive, that is so uncared about, they resort to just different means. Gun violence in urban communities are a uneducated problem. They're an unfunded problem. They're poor people's problem. And when I say that, that means that if you give them education that is actually sustainable, if you give them and provide them with jobs that they can actually make a living wage off of, I guarantee you, majority of that gun violence will drop.
And I also think it comes back to the media perspective and how these things are covered, because we typically profile these issues by whoever the race of the shooter a lot of the time. So if they're Middle Eastern, they're considered a terrorist. If they're white, they're mentally ill. If they're black, they're a criminal. If they're Central American or South American, they're illegal. And in all these instances, the one thing that they always forget to cover is that this should have never happened, period, no matter where anybody comes from or who they are. And we have to do a better job of talking about mental health and not stigmatizing it more when we talk about mass shootings. And one, not just talk about mental health in white communities, because that's what we're talking about when we talk about mental health with mass shootings, to be quite frank. And two, we can't continue to stigmatize mental health by acting like every mentally ill person is a violent person, because statistically speaking, more often than not, a vast majority of the time, people that are mentally ill are more likely, way more likely than somebody that is not, to be the victim of gun violence and the person perpetrating it. And when the media talks about urban gun violence, it's determined by your zip code how the narrative is told. Because if you live in a neighborhood with gangs, it is immediately assumed that you are part of a gang. And I've seen this myself. My friend Zion Kelly, who spoke at the March for Our Lives in D.C., his brother Zaire was murdered about a year ago in D.C. And he was walking home from a college prep class, and he was shot and killed because he was mugged at gunpoint and tried fighting back, but he was shot and died right by his house. He was walking home from a college prep class. Do you know how the news covered that? As gang violence. When we can't, journalists must do a better job of looking into the actual details and actually reporting what's causing these crimes and not immediately assuming that your violence is determined and your story or your suffering is determined by your zip code. That's not okay. And lastly, when it comes to policy that addresses urban gun violence, one thing that we have to be aware of is we can't treat violence with more incarceration, period. In a country with more incarcerated people than basically any other country in the world, you would expect that we don't have these problems anymore. But surprisingly enough, throwing people in a jail cell doesn't solve drug addiction. It doesn't end violence because they come back into a society where they have a blemish on their record, they can't get a job, and turn back to crime because they have no further opportunity. And that's where things like funding violence intervention programs come in that don't increase incarceration, save lives, and save tax-paying dollars. Where in some cities, violence intervention programs that treat violence as a health epidemic and stop shootings as they're happening or before they happen by teaching kids about nonviolence, teaching them about conflict de-escalation without firearms, have been able to reduce violence in an average community where they've done this over 100 times in America by 40 to 70% within the first year, and in some communities where they had several murders a year to 0 over the past 10 years. We don't hear about those stories because they're not tough on crime and they're not politically popular, but they're effective and they save money and lives. And lastly, when people talk about the fact that Chicago has strict gun laws, one, they don't have strict gun laws. They have lax gun laws pretty much. Two, when we're talking about violence in Chicago, we have to realize that Chicago doesn't have the most gun violence in America. St. Louis has significantly more. And also the fact that even if Chicago had the strictest gun laws in America as a city, they're able to go to Indiana and bring guns over easily and be able to traffic them in. And that's why we need to advocate for a 1 gun per month policy except for bona fide gun collectors, where they're able to significantly reduce the number of guns that are brought across state lines illegally. Because when people talk about good guys and bad guys, there's no such thing as like, in these scenarios when people come and bring guns across state lines, a vast majority of time, they start out as 100% legal guns that are bought from less than 0.5% of gun dealers. ATF is drastically underfunded, and our federal government and the NRA is actively advocating against law enforcement and ATF from being able to do their job because they don't fund them enough. They don't give them the proper recording system for gun sales so that even if they were able to pick a gun, it's not like NCIS where it's like, okay, I'm going to put in a computer and find immediately where this person is. No, it's literally 3 people that work in a West Virginian warehouse with millions of paper records, most of which they can't find because they can't categorize them by law. We need to help law enforcement be able to solve these crimes and also aid the people in these communities by treating violence as a health epidemic and not just see the validity of violence based off zip code or income, but based off the fact that you're a human being that shouldn't have to experience violence, period.
Amazing. Last question, and then we have to go, but I think there's an after party with like drinks and
free
stuff,
food,
sodas, and
a DJ,
and DJs.
Have fun.
Yeah. What is your plan after the midterms? What is the next biggest mission?
Finals.
Finals. Yeah. It's a big one. Anyone have big plans they can talk about?
I kind of have
secret plans.
You want to? That's maybe not as interesting as that side. But after the midterms, I'm going to Costa Rica for a summit of 15 American students. To meet with Oscar, the former president of Costa Rica. And we're going to talk about how Costa Rica is so peaceful and what we can bring back to the United States as youth activists in America.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Well, we've got a lot of plans. A lot of it definitely depends on the situation in our country, legislation-wise, after November 6th. but we are going to continue to push for laws at the state level and at the federal level. So far, we've had over 60 laws passed across the country, but federally, they're lacking. We're also going to be working on our chapter organization. We have over 250 active chapters right now. You can see how they're doing in Houston. But there are so many out there, so many others that have been doing really great work. As you can see, the numbers of early voting among young people is up 300 to 500% in a lot of states. So we are going to work tirelessly. Like David said, November 6th is just the beginning of a new chapter, and we are going to be working with those chapters.
Amazing. And where can people sign up if they want to join a local chapter?
MarchForOurLives.com.
Easy peasy. Great. Well, thank you so much. Who feels inspired right now? Who feels activated right now? Yes. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us. Thank you so much to the Congresswoman and Captain Kelly. And let's all go eat some food. Let's do it. Thank you.
Courage is the most important of all the virtues, finding courage in the leaders and in you who will become leaders. Because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently.
What is courage? How do we define it? How does it show up? What does it look like? Courage is running toward instead of running away. Courage shows truth to power and stands its ground. It's walking out. It's sitting down. It's marching toward something greater. Courage is telling your story even when it's hard to speak. It's there when we defend our families and communities, when we dare to love, when we stay in the race. Courage is contagious. Courage helps us find the grace to forgive. Courage looks like this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Arielle Giffords from Southern Arizona. You know, you can either complain about something or you can try to fix it.
I will always extend my hand across the aisle to do what's right for the American people, to build consensus, and to get the job done.
The defiance of the mob in the service of what is right is one of the highest expectations of courage that I know.
Earlier today, a number of people were shot in Tucson, Arizona. We know that Representative Giffords was one of the victims. She is currently at a hospital in the area, and she is battling for her life.
Arizona Congresswoman Arielle Giffords, wounded in an assassination attempt just about 2 weeks ago, is about to take the next big step along what's expected to be a long road to recovery.
It takes courage to keep going, especially when it feels impossible.
To witness the return of our colleague who is the personification of courage, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
It's standing up and finding your voice again. It's learning something new. Courage is listening, and courage is speaking out. Courage is saying, we can do better, and knowing no problem is too big to fix.
I figure if the world wants you, I'll give a better world.
This is what courage looks like.
Courage.